Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson and his complicated future in Indy. Our Colts reporter Stephen Holder writing, Richardson has 1 season remaining on his rookie contract, assuming the Colts decline to exercise his 2027 fifth-year option. May 1st is the deadline for that. Richardson is owed a $4.24 million roster bonus in August and is scheduled to count $10.82 million against the salary cap in 2026. Should the Colts trade him before June 1st, they would save $5.385 million against the salary cap. Assuming Richardson is fully healed from the facial injury, he figures to have some value. Each of the following quarterbacks were traded for draft pick compensation in the last 2 seasons: Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Malik Willis, and Taylor Heineke. So, yeah, look, this is still a young player, right, Tim, that might be of interest to teams that are looking to take a shot maybe on an upside play at quarterback. What do you think the Colts should be thinking here?
I think that, yeah, it's something to consider. Look, if you're going to get the compensation that, the Steelers got for Kenny Pickett, which I think was like 3rd round plus some other picks as well, look, maybe you do something like that. I'm just not positive. In fact, I know that the market will not be as strong for Richardson as it was for Pickett. Pickett had played, many more games and had produced better. The other thing that's complicating this is that Daniel Jones is coming off of a significant injury. And, the other quarterbacks that have come off of similar injuries, albeit, older guys, and Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, they haven't really been right away. So I think it probably makes a little bit more sense because you're probably not going to get a whole lot for Richardson. And your quarterback situation, at least for the first month of the season, could be, in a tricky situation. So I would actually keep Richardson, see if you can get him to play well, and then at that point kind of figure out your next move with him going forward.
Adam Schefter reporting that it is unlikely the Seahawks will use their franchise tag on running back and Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker, per league sources. Seahawks have multiple free agents they want to retain and sign. They're also trying to extend wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba, cornerback Devin Witherspoon. So enough Super Bowl-related tax that they want to avoid the franchise tag and the high cap hit that comes with it. That doesn't mean, Mina, that they don't want to bring Kenneth Walker back. What do you think the plan should be for Seattle at running back this offseason?
Yeah, I think you explore a contract extension. Obviously, Super Bowl MVP was so explosive down the stretch. A little bit boomer bust as a back, but I do think if you're Seattle, you're hesitant to spend too much. Not just given the position, but also there are so many good free agent running backs and good values, one of which I'm going to talk about later, that I think Seattle should consider.
Walker would be the first Super Bowl MVP to change teams since Dexter Jackson left the Buccaneers to go to the Cardinals in 2003. Another in case you missed it, our Kimberly Martin reporting that wide receiver Mike Evans will return in 2026. His agents, Derek Gilmore and Darren Jones, told Kimberly the future Hall of Famer will play this upcoming season and will explore his free agency options. So one of the league's most consistent playmakers will be back. We'll see if it'll be with the Bucs. Tim, which team should be in the market for the 33-year-old star wideout?
Well, I think Tampa should be in the market of trying to, keep him even if he does test free agency. And look, they're a legitimate contending team. They can win their division, give themselves a shot, and so I think that makes sense. The other one for me is the Buffalo Bills. I would compare him a little bit to Davante Adams from the standpoint of he's a big guy that catches touchdowns. And, you pair that with a, really good quarterback. You look at what happened to Davante Adams, with the Rams being with Matthew Stafford. So I think Buffalo, it's a need for them. I think he would put up, monster numbers, and I think it's a good fit for both player and team again.
Lamar Jackson dealing with a contract situation. Last time he did that, he wasn't around too much in the offseason. How do you think this plays out with Lamar?
Yeah, I have no idea how to play out with Lamar, but clearly the message has been sent. The owner, Steve Bisciotti, had said, look, if Lamar wants to be part of the interview process and sit in on those, then come to Baltimore, show up. And, I think what Declan Doyle is saying, hey, if you want to win a championship, come to Baltimore, show up, be a part of it. I just think that they're like, look, Lamar's not been in the league for 10 years. You know, a lot of times when guys take the offseason off, it's just because of just the wear and tear, you know, on their bodies. They've been doing it so long, they maybe don't need to do it. And they're typically guys that have had massive postseason success. That's really not been the case for Lamar. So, look, I think not showing up is an indication that you're more concerned about, you know, you than you are about the team. And I think it's a bad message to send. And, you know, I think Declan Doyle is probably spot on, you know, in terms of how he was talking about it.
You know, I think that for Lamar, it would be a good, I think it would be helpful for him to be a part of this offseason as much as possible, because it's a new offense, you know? I mean, you have a new offensive coordinator, and there's some continuity between Chicago and Baltimore, a lot of outside zone, for, you know, under center and whatnot. But I also think that there's going to be some pretty significant changes. And I also think, for the purposes of making sure that new offense clicks, they need to add pieces. You know, when I think about the Bears offense and why they were so dominant this season at times running the football, I really think about the interior of that offensive line. They invested so much in it last offseason. The Ravens' best lineman, their center, is a free agent who's about to break the bank. The guards, I think, were a position that they need to upgrade. And so for this all to work, in addition to the quarterback being part of it, I think the front office needs to really focus on bolstering the offensive line so that those players are in peace all offseason to help get the new scheme going.
Yeah, we all know how that worked out for Chicago. They were 15th in pass blocking in 2024, first this past year after that big off season. Lamar Jackson not the only quarterback with a new offensive coordinator this year. Brian Daboll is hoping to find success with Cam Ward the way he did with Josh Allen in Buffalo and Daniel Jones in New York. He's got something to work with. Over the final 10 weeks of this past season, no quarterback had a better pass touchdown to interception ratio than Cam Ward. None of them. Not even Matthew Stafford, who was MVP of the league. Daboll was asked about his new quarterback yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
Again, we've had some young quarterbacks previously with obviously Josh and Jackson at New York, but everybody's different. I don't want to just put him into a particular box. I think the most important thing is to first develop the relationship with the young man. I always like to see the game through the quarterback's eyes. And again, there's going to be mistakes out there that I think he's made on tape previous, and he might have a completely different answer. So that communication is really important. Yeah, I feel comfortable with Cam. His ability to throw the football, his athleticism. Everybody's a little bit different in their drops. Everybody's a little different with their throwing motion. I'm excited to work with this young man.
Tim, how do you see the Brian Daboll-Cam Ward pairing working out down there in Nashville?
I think it'll be good. I think it's good that Daboll, you know, was obviously part of the quarterback evaluation a year ago, you know, looking at all the quarterbacks, considering in New York they drafted Dart. And so I don't think he would take the job in Tennessee if he didn't really believe in Cam Ward, because look, his success as a coordinator is going to be, you know, largely predicated on Ward's development. So I think that in and of itself is, you know, a really good thing for, you know, just the relationship, the expectation. And I think we'll see a lot of improvement considering, you know, how quickly, you know, Callahan was let go and how much that changed things in Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about this relationship, this hire. You know, Brian Daboll's, I think, done a good job of calling offenses tailored around to the skills of his quarterbacks. But when I look back at the Josh Allen experience and his improvement there, I think is a big part of why people are excited about Daboll. I also look at the pieces they added around Josh Allen, particularly Stephon Diggs, I think was catalytic in that offense. And if I'm Tennessee, I'm looking to double up investing in a receiver, which is such a massive need for them. I would add a valuable free agent like an Alec Pierce, for example, as well as considering drafting a receiver with my 4th overall pick. Because I think what we've seen, and I'll go to Chicago again as an example, is even if you have defensive needs with a young quarterback, it is worth it to invest a lot into the offense so that you can get his development on track. That's very important with Cam Ward.